Hello, this is Chuck Solomon, and welcome to the Candidate Experience Podcast, where we focus on the job candidate journey from apply to onboard and the space in between. Let's get started. You care about the candidate experience, but have you ever wondered exactly how to bring your company to that next level and offer a world-class experience to your candidates? It's not easy. Fortunately, Candidate.fyi can help. Their solution guides candidates through your hiring journey, enhancing transparency and communication at every touch point. You'll also gain valuable insights on what's working and what's not with your hiring process. Best of all, it integrates directly with your ATS. Head on over to Candidate.fyi and see how to transform your company's candidate experience today. Chris Russell joins as my special guest in this Rejections, Demos, and Facebook episode where we discuss ways to improve the job candidate experience. You'll want to listen carefully to how Chris unpacks why companies should revamp their candidate rejection process. If you like what you're hearing on this podcast, please subscribe wherever you enjoy podcasts and do share with others. Thanks for listening, and here's my interview. Chris, how did you get into this whole recruiting industry?
So, I have an interesting kind of history and how I got into all this. So, going way back in the day, back in the even the mid '90s, I guess I was moonlighting as a resume writer. After graduating college, I had a marketing degree. I was kind of a big on personal marketing overall as far as a career goes. So I started doing some resume writing for friends, things like that. It's kind of where I first got my feet wet. And then back in 1999, I was working at a web design company. I've been doing web design stuff for a couple of years. Started out at Gartner over in Stamford, Connecticut, working on their website. That's kind of where I got the bug. It's where I first saw the internet as well. Anyway, this web design firm that I was working at, I was kind of a project manager there, and we had a client who was a staffing firm, and that staffing firm needed a website, needed to be able to post jobs and edit those jobs on his website, and that's where all this kind of got started for me. I did that project. I helped get that site launched, and almost immediately I started thinking about my own job board in terms of a little side business I could do. So I'd been reading. There's a great magazine back then called Business 2.0. I don't know if you remember that one, but I remember reading an article about how some of the job boards at the time, like Monster and I think the other one was Techies.com, they were creating these little niche sites off of their main ones, like Hartford.techies.com. And I was like, oh, you know what? I could start a local site for where I live in Connecticut, in Fairfield County. And so I did a little research. I got my domain name settled, and having just kind of worked on that project originally for job postings, I said, let me build a job board for Fairfield County, Connecticut. And that summer, I basically went home at night. I coded it up in ASP pages on my own, and I launched my first job board back in September of 1999, during the .com boom days.
Right, I remember.
So it was I had timing on my side as well. I had a few friends in HR. They basically signed on right away. I got some press in the paper. I started doing radio ads, and the thing just started taking off, much to my surprise. And so I was still working for about 2 years, and finally when the .bomb hit, I got laid off, of course, but by that time, I basically built the site into a second income. And so I just said, heck with it. I'm just going to work on this thing from my house, and the rest is history, essentially. So I built that site into a 20-site local network, all but for the Northeast, basically, all with a county focus. So Fairfield County Jobs, HartfordCountyJobs.com, all different counties in the area. And I ran that for about 13 years, built it up into a six-figure business. It's kind of a lifestyle business, if you will. I had a few employees along the way, but Primarily just worked out of my house, and learned a lot about online recruiting during that time frame. I started to do some writing about it. I started to get contacted by other job board owners on how to improve their boards and things like that. So that's where all this got started. It was back in 1999. It was my first job board that I put up online after working on a project for a staffing firm. And so I love this stuff, Chuck. It's in my blood. I love helping people get jobs, and it's something that I'm really passionate about overall. Now, once I sold the business, I had another startup called Career Cloud, which kind of focused on social resumes using things like Facebook's API. I worked there for a couple of years, eventually shut it down because Facebook kind of cut off their API access to a lot of stuff, which kind of ruined my business plans there. But
right.
that was
not just you, Chris. Those open APIs that end up being closed or limited APIs end up squashing a number of businesses out there.
Yeah, totally. I had a great product called Jobs with Friends, and it basically would pull in your Facebook friends. It would then match up jobs at where they work and help you get introduced to those jobs through that friend. Which I thought was a great, it was a great referral tool,
right?
And Facebook just ruined it on me. So it's like I wish I knew Zuckerberg. I would have given him a piece of my mind. But anyway, after that, I sold.
You still can. You have my permission to. So I think he probably has some bigger fish to fry at this point in time.
I actually got quoted in the Wall Street Journal about all that stuff because they did a piece on how Facebook just kind of turns back-end developers like that, and ruined a lot of people's plans, I guess. But anyway, I digress. So I sold off the assets at Career Cloud a couple of years ago, and I became a corporate recruiter as well. I'd always been writing a lot about recruiting and attracting talent online. I never wanted to be accused of not being a practitioner, so I basically, after I sold Career Cloud, after I closed Career Cloud, I became a corporate recruiter for a software company and then a cruise line here in Connecticut. Kind of got my feet wet, dived into that. Really enjoyed the work. Didn't like the companies I worked for, but learned a lot. Just wanted to get my feet in that arena as well, and I learned a lot there as well. And once I left that gig about 3.5 years ago, I decided to go work for myself again, and launched RegTech Media around that. So that's kind of my journey. And today, basically, my job is, I guess I call myself a digital recruiting expert, Chuck, where I basically am educating recruiters and employers on the latest and greatest tools and technologies. I do a lot of writing. I do a lot of podcasting and webinars, really trying to educate and inform the industry as a whole along the way here. So that's kind of my story so far.
Well, interesting story. And did I hear you correctly? You said you're actually really technical. Like you said, I coded up some ASP pages and stuff. So you're a highly technical person. I'm assuming.
Yeah, I speak tech. I write HTML code. Not much of a coder anymore. Those days are behind me. But I've done things like install ATSs at companies. I took my last employer from Taleo to iSIMS. Did the project entirely by myself in about 6 weeks, with a lot of help from the iSIMS tech support line. But I understand technology pretty well, how to leverage it, how to install it, job board technology as well. I still set up a number of job boards for companies today as well. And so, it's something that I love to work on. I really I have the marketing side of me and I have the tech side of me. So I think it's two good skills to have, especially in recruiting overall.
That's for sure.
I think most recruiters today are just very technically challenged, and it's hard for them to grasp a lot of this stuff. So I see it as kind of my job to help bridge that gap a bit, if you will.
What would you say? Because I hear this from, I hear this a lot. I hear, there's so many, current tech tools and things available, and there's always new ones coming on the horizon. But what would you say to a talent acquisition director or HR director that said, "Hey, I just don't have enough time to do all these demos"? I mean, what would you say to a person like that?
I would say, I think if you're serious about the candidate experience and how you track talent online, I think you have to basically make time to do that. It's changing so rapidly now, and I think now especially the next generation of candidate out there, the Gen Z, the millennials, whatever you want to call them,
Sure.
they expect good technology when they're applying to your company, getting on board and all that stuff, right? They see that as a way to, as a differentiator, right, overall. So if you're not serious about kind of improving that apply process, that onboarding process itself, then I think you're going to be, as an organization, be left behind the companies that do care about it overall. I just had Jerry Crispin on my podcast talking about
Mm-hmm.
the candidate experience and how important that is, right? And technology can certainly help as far as that goes. Minimizing the time it takes to apply online is sort of that core, to me, one of the core principles of a good candidate experience overall. Gone are the days of 20-minute surveys you got to fill in order to get your resume submitted on there, right? Today's candidates do not want that. They're just going to abandon it, and so it's something that I think you have to really embrace as a TA leader today.
I totally agree with you. I think, and I did a survey about this 2018, 2017. I surveyed about 25 or 30 HR directors at pretty sizable companies. Most of them were Fortune 1000 size. And I said, what is your biggest challenge around hiring and finding talent? And number one answer with like 85% response rate had some iteration of having to deal with salespeople. Whether it be, and I'd use sort of the broadest sense of salespeople, having to deal with HR tech vendors, having to deal with recruiting agencies trying to sell their services, having to deal with like background checking services, trying to pitch their services and stuff. But I don't know if there's a so that was enlightening to me that's what they stated was their highest concern. And I know we're at 3.8% unemployment today, but unemployment was probably like 5%, still pretty low when I did the survey, and very small percentage said, just getting a hold of talent. The respondents said, basically contrary to what you said is, you're saying HR people should spend the time and find the time to demo things, and these folks are saying they can't be bothered. So I'm with you, Chris. I think they need to be bothered. They need to make time for this. If they're not going to be left behind.
I have a couple of tips around that. So,
sure.
Number one, if you don't have anybody technical on your staff, find somebody on your IT department and bring them over and let them listen in on these demo calls, and they can kind of call BS when they probably hear it, right?
Right.
If the salesperson is talking tech stuff, use them as kind of a interpreter, if you will. The second thing would be go into Facebook. There are a lot of good Facebook groups like Talent Product Plays. We can actually just post questions. Has anybody used this tool, right? And you'll get some actually honest feedback from people out there in the wild who are using some of this stuff. There's a pretty big community of recruiters on Facebook who are talking to each other and kind of comparing notes with different technologies out there. So the information is out there if you want it. It just takes some time and effort to go and do the research and get involved.
Yeah, no, great tips for that. So I really want to get into our topic for today, which is really you had suggested it, and I appreciate you bringing it to me because I think it's an important topic, and it totally it totally speaks to the candidate journey. And but you came to me with the topic of why employers need to revamp their whole rejection process. So I'm hoping the way I look at it is 100 people are going to apply to a job, perhaps, or more, and only one is going to get it. What do you do with the remainder 99? I don't know. So I'm hoping you can help shed some light on this topic for us. Why do employers need to revamp their rejection process?
I think the short answer is it's your chance as an employer to leave a good last impression with that candidate. overall, right? So especially if you're things like a consumer business, you could be turning away customers as well through this kind of bad experience. I've done a
Sure.
lot of research on just rejecting out, getting rejected out there. I've probably applied to, I don't know, 50 jobs in the past 6 months as part of this. And I'd say only about half of the companies actually ever sent me a rejection notice. So number one, that's the first problem right there. Companies of today aren't even they're not even closing the loop with the candidate. And so that's why candidates are bitching so much about this, this resume black hole, right?
Right.
If you can't take the time to send a rejection notice, whenever that is, to a candidate, you're wasting their time, right? Because
Sure.
they're sitting there wondering, okay, what's going on, right? You could be holding their job search back. Many candidates will apply to a job, think they're really qualified for it, and wait, and they're hoping that you might contact them. So basically, they're going to slow their job search. They're going to stop applying on places until they hear from you. And so, to me, as an employer, I think you owe it to the candidate to give them a yes or no as soon as possible. Number one, right?
Sure.
I think it has to be sort of part of the candidate bill of rights, if you will. You don't have to. And to me, I made sure every candidate I had, and I was a recruiter, got a yes or no. And there's no excuse for doing it. You can use technology to make your job easier. You can mass reject, people who apply and things like that through ATSs.
Sure.
So to me, the technology is there to do it, but why aren't they doing it? They just don't seem to care enough about that candidate experience overall. And I think it's your last chance to make an impression on that candidate. They might go to Glassdoor and rant about you, how they never heard back from you, or they give you, or you sent them a just templated default thing that sounds extremely unpersonal overall. That they read. And so I really hate that experience overall. And I think this is something that every company today can do. It costs them nothing, essentially, right?
Right.
You can have a better rejection process by simply rewording your email templates and making your recruiters, reject everyone that comes in, or pushing through the process overall. So, Virgin Media found that 18% of their rejected candidates are also customers, and that poor candidate experience caused thousands of these people to churn. And so they calculated it cost them like $6 million in lost revenue overall.
Wow.
And so one thing they did to kind of counteract that was they put flight coupons or flight vouchers in their rejection emails, offering these candidates discounts to Virgin Atlantic flights. Excellent scenario, right? Turning that rejected candidate into a customer through a simple offer that cost them nothing and earned them money in the end, right? Very, very great example of a company that is doing rejection right. But so number one is, you gotta close that loop. It's the biggest problem right now with the rejection emails overall. They might be ready to apply later on as well. So if they don't hear from you right away, how do you know they're not a good candidate or not? They give them a chance to basically come back to you, set their expectations overall. I think that's something you should be doing, like in the thank you for applying email that most people send out. Is setting the candidate expectation of what's going to happen with their resume at that point. And the more you tell them up front, the more you prep them and set their sights on what's going to happen next, is only going to benefit you as an employer overall. So, they're going to talk about you with their networks. They're going to go to Glassdoor. And so I think that great recruiters understand that the long-term impact candidates have on their company, and they handle rejections better overall like that. So that's really why you need to start caring about some of this stuff.
Yeah, good stuff there. Do you think, as a follow-up question, do you think that, there's obviously, a company posts their job somewhere, they're going to get, say, 100, I'm using 100 as a round number, 100 candidates apply, probably a good 90% of them probably aren't going to be qualified. Maybe, but there's going to be a small subset of candidates that are going to be qualified and are going to go through some sort of interview, phone interview, in-person interviewing process. So do you think there should be the same or different or more enhanced rejection process for the 90% that aren't qualified get one thing, and what about the people that actually you engage? Like one of the recruiters took time, maybe the hiring manager actually took time. Like, how do you differentiate, or how should you do things differently or the same, in your opinion?
Yeah, so definitely you want to break up the stages of that rejection process, right? So you've got sort of the 90% rule, which is, the mass rejection email will work just fine as long as you send it out in a timely manner. And you let them down gently, right? Then you've got the people who you phone screen, perhaps, who didn't make the cut. I think they deserve a slightly different template as well. And then you get the people who you actually interviewed, you brought in-house. And to me, if I had the time to do this, I would basically, anybody who I brought in-house for an interview, I would basically call and tell them why they're not getting the job. You can give them some feedback in terms of, hey, we found just a better candidate match. The hiring manager had a better, thought this other candidate might fill the job better, whatever it might be. That's how I would handle it. So you definitely want to break it up in terms of who that person is and at which stage they came to the process and at which stage you rejected them overall. So I think Johnson & Johnson, if I recall correctly, they have 9 different rejection templates. I'm not exactly sure what the stages are they have, but I think they may break them out into even 2 department level ones as well.
Sure.
Around their different processes. So, but at the very least, I think sort of a mass rejection and after phone interview rejection, and then after interview in-house rejection is kind of the minimum you would need to have for proper rejection, cadence, if you will.
Gotcha. What do you say to, because I've hear this time and time again, and I think part of it is part of the reason for sort of the radio silence, if you will, where candidates don't hear anything. But I've heard from HR people that they're afraid of saying the wrong thing and for that to be used against them, and they see their job as like trying to keep the company out of hot water and legal, out of legal hot water there. So, I mean, what would you say to, because I thought you made a great suggestion, like the folks that you're interviewing, you actually pick up the phone, call them and tell them, why they're not getting the job. I mean, what would you say to a HR director that says, we can't do that, we're going to get sued? How do you respond?
I don't know. I sometimes I think it's a cop out because they're afraid of what's going to happen. But
right,
I do feel their pain in a way because rejection is hard, right? I think that number one, I think they'd be surprised at the amount of candidates who would appreciate an honest rejection overall. I think most people can take bad news, and so I think that if you tried it, I think you'd be more surprised at how well they take that. Right? I think honest, open feedback helps that person move on overall. So if I know I'm lacking a skill in a certain area, or I just didn't have a good rapport enough with the hiring manager, I can handle it as a candidate, right? I think most people can overall. So that's the first thing I would say. Secondly, there are ways you can word it, right? You can kind of give them some generalized feedback along, hey, we just found a better candidate overall, right? It's not that you weren't a bad candidate, it's just that we found somebody better, and leave it at that. You can kind of word it in a way, to let them down gently, essentially. The thing I'm doing with RegTech Media too is I'm trying to also add value to that process. So I know Johnson & Johnson partnered with the Muse, and they offer some kind of content in their rejection emails. I'm not exactly sure what it is, but maybe just some advice, things like that. And so if you can be an advocate for the job seeker as well. So I came up with this concept called Rejobify.
I love the name, by the way.
Yeah. So
it's unique. Rejobify.
Don't just reject the candidate, Rejobify. And the idea there is to help them become a better job seeker through your rejection email. So what we do is it's at rejobify.com. We take the employer email, we kind of rewrite it, make it sound better than it used to sound, because 9 times out of 10, they're all just kind of the default one that comes with the ATS. And we insert an offer in there. It says, as a thank you for taking the time to apply, we've teamed up with a company like Rejections to help you become a better job seeker. And so we're putting an offer in there for the job seeker to go and improve their job search skills. So we put a link that says just click here to access a free job hunting course over on the Rejections site and other tools to continue your job search. And so, we're letting them down gently in the first opening sentence there of that rejection email. But we're telling them, don't be discouraged. Like I'm reading one of my templates here now. It says, though your resume and experience are impressive, we cannot offer you a position at this time, but please don't be discouraged. We'd be delighted if you consider us as a future employer and hear from you again. We encourage applicants to look for alternate positions on our site, and perhaps you'll find something else. And as a thank you for taking the time to apply. We've teamed up with Rejections. So I want to give back to the job seeker. I want companies to help them help their rejected candidates, help the people they can't hire to go out there and find another job through some of the tools and free courses that we have on there. So That's what the premise of Rejections is. And it's something that I think every company should be doing, no matter what. You're really just taking the time to rethink how you word that rejection email, and what you do from there will really go a long way towards making you more of an employer of choice and helping to set that, set your employer brand in the market, if you will. So.
Sure. You had mentioned earlier Virgin and J&J. Are there other companies that come to mind where you think that they're working hard on candidates' experience, that you would say, yeah, they're doing this well, other than you already mentioned Virgin and J&J?
Yeah, it's definitely being driven by, I'd say, the big global companies at the moment, Chuck.
Sure.
That's where it's kind of trickling down from, I think. So you're seeing like the Starbucks, Capital One. I know Capital One basically ranks all their recruiters, and they make there's a survey for their candidates, and on that survey they can basically say, did a recruiter contact you?
Mm-hmm.
And they have a list of all that stuff that happens. So the head of TA there can go back and check each month and see which recruiters didn't contact that candidate. So there are companies who are out there now doing it. I think the Candidate Experience Awards are a good place to find those companies. But again, sure, they are being driven by the big kind of Fortune 500s. They're the ones who seem to get it right now overall. And a lot of that innovation is being driven by those big global players, I think.
Sure. Well, I appreciate your insights into this for sure. If listeners want to go ahead and learn more about you or find you after this, how would they go about doing that?
Yeah, I'm all over the web. I think sometimes I have too many websites and things like that, but rectechmedia.com is probably the best place. It's kind of a hub for everything I do on there.
Gotcha. Thank you, Chris, for your time and your insights.
My pleasure, Chuck. It was great chatting with you today.
Thanks for listening to the Candidate Experience Podcast. You can reach out to us via our website, thecx.xyz. That's thecx.xyz.